A very good afternoon.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
Good afternoon to all the members. Welcome to all the members of very important VCM circular economy, CSR and sustainability. Today we have a very renowned professor with us for this topic. He is presently professor at CSRD School of Social Science, JNU. He is visiting professor for 3 universities, Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, and Rajasthan. He is a community development advisor for the 2 universities, HP and Rajasthan. He is chairman of the governing body, Miranda House, University of Delhi. He is Secretary General of All India Vice Chancellor and Academician Association. He is ex-chief proctor, JNU, and governing body member, School of Open Learning, University of Delhi. He is ex-member of court, JNU, ex-AC member, JNU at RGNIYD, member AC, JRNR Vidyapeeth, Udaipur. He is a member of Board of Studies, Management Studies, Engineering, Department and Northeast Studies, Education, Geography, IGNOU, South Bihar, Central University, Delhi University. With a brief introduction, I would request Sir to take over the session and please share with us your experience for CSR and sustainability.
Okay. Thank you, Shakunji. Thank you. I also thank Sonali ji also for asking me to speak on this topic related to circular economy, CSR and sustainability. Now, there is a reason behind that why I really took up this exercise. Because in the kind of a changing scenario today and the kind of the changes happening and more or less after the COVID-19, the whole concept of economics have changed. And along with that, when the CSR came into existence, it's not a new one, but it has been a historical past. These activities, maybe in philanthropic form, were carried over by people from historical time to present. But now it is being institutionalized, therefore the role is identified. And the kind of commitment through CSR towards sustainability is also attained. And they say that your business should also be only sustainable once your CSR is sustainable. So in this context, I hope I thought that I should share with you my ways of how I look at this exercise. Now, people would be wondering that I'm not an economist, but I teach geography of economics. I'm a professor of economic geography. And I have been, again, I applied geographer who looks at the micro level initiatives of economic change at a grassroots level in the villages. And then I try to understand that how this whole concept keeps changing from one period to another period with changes in the time. And probably that is the reason where I thought I should pick up an exercise with you all to work on this. Now, before I get into this concept of the circular economy, CSR and sustainability, I hope the CSR committee might have been taking up a lot of programs and they are continuously doing it on CSR. But sustainability, of course, they will be doing it related to circular economy and how to relate it to local level. And what is the role in between the public sector, private sector organizations, those who are making a profit, and they are able to use that amount of finances to regulate a mechanism of change in society, in environment, and two other different parameters decided from time to time by the organization. Now, with this hope, I hope you all also know, being chartered accountant, that how the financing is being done in the different organizations of your concern. Now, before I again go into the detail, let me try to understand what has happened in the world. Now, when you look back to 1930s, there was a great economic depression, and the economic system really changed the mindset of how it can really happen, and how this can happen at a time when we were looking for a faster change. But that economic depression really gave a new idea that how we need to regulate the economy, maybe primary sector or maybe tertiary sector or the secondary sector, how or we need to relate them to. All these in terms for, and therefore the economic depression gave a new ways of thinking related to economy. Period. I hope it went on like that, and then we had suddenly there was a Second World War, and I hope after the Second World War, all these economies, those who were governed by the European nations, they all became free, and they have to adopt the different kind of growth models. And that was the beginning of 50s and beyond. All these kind of marginalized economies of that time probably thought of a borrowed model of economic growth. And that was to see that how their economy will move faster, and that will try to bring changes at a grassroots level in terms of livelihood, or maybe in terms for changing the life of people or providing justice to them. It went on like that. But then suddenly what happened was that during the or the toward the end of 1980s, there was a great shock of economy to USA because of the drought, and that happened for the first time. They had to import wheat from the rest of the whole world. So that kind of a situation emerged toward the late 80s, that if first world nation would continue to export and produce goods at their own end, will not solve the purpose, because at the same time OPEC country also increased the oil prices. So there was a double shock to the world, one by increasing the oil prices, and the second one was that how the drought in US probably created a situation for the first world nation to understand that let's try to change the model from export now to import. And then it was said that yes, the first world would take the responsibility of investment in the third world nation for faster rate of change in their economic resources or natural resources, and that will also benefit the first world nation. So the first world nation would become importers, third world countries would become importers, exporters, and the funds will flow from the first world to the third world, and resources will flow from the third world to first world. This was a cycle. This is a circular economy. That is what was perceived at that time, that how it is going to work on. It went on, and then suddenly then there was a Rio de Janeiro conference, and it was said that we should have sustainable development. And it never talked about the sustainability. It never talked at that time at a great length about the CSR. But there was a notion that yes, we should have a balance and a sustainable development. And that balanced sustainable development is that how economic growth, population, consumption, distribution, all will balance, and we would have an equitable balance of growth, and that is what they call the sustainable development. And let me tell you that one thing, that the sustainable word was also not defined very clearly, and even the word called as the development is also not defined well. Now, development, say for example, is qualitative and a quantitative change. Now, what kind of a qualitative change the world under the sustainability was looking at, or a sustainable way looking at that was not very clearly defined. But yes, the sustainable development became a big program, and that is how it carried on for another 10, 15 years. And at that same time, the Global Compact came, and that Global Compact talks about the various parameters related to human rights, environment issues. Likewise, they took up both the issues of environment, the labor, the industries, human rights. I hope under the UN Global Compact, this became a forefront that there should be a social justice to all different parameters of human mankind and the environment. And when it was growing on, and towards the end of, say, 2010, India was under the pressure to adopt or to bring in CSR into the policy under the government and the private sector making good amount of profit. And then the 2010, some guidelines were issued by the then government, and Manmohan Singh ji also gave us 7, 8, 10 principles for the guidelines under the CSR program. And the corporations were asked to adopt these guidelines in their own into their own corporations and modify and change as per own standards. Need to start working on them. And that was the time when the Millennium Development Goals were also in operation, and all guidelines talked about the sustainable development through CSR can be maintained by adopting the Millennium Development Goals. Now, at that point of time, I began with Terry Heidel Development Corporation to chalk out a long-term plan for CSR, and we did it. In 2011, we did the baseline survey, and then we gave them the technical and financial input. A major program was initiated, which is still being carried over after 11 years now, maybe 10 years now. So this is a long, major-term project. I will be covering toward the end how the sustainability at a micro level can be created. But my association with the CSR begins from 2010, when Terry Idle Development Corporation asked me to do some survey to start some programs on rural development. And at the same time, I was also involved with THDC India Limited under their CSR program, ONGC, Power Grid, Power Finance, NTPC, NBCC. I hope I have been working on the CSR, ONGC. I have been working with more than 10, 11 corporations on their CSR program. And I also helped at that time to formulate the CSR policy and also help them to do something on the communication strategy too. So therefore, my association with my association with the CSR begins from that time. And I'm happy to say that I'm working on the the Millennium Development Goal at that time, keeping the focus of the CSR policy into the framework. By the time we were in operation in 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals came into existence, and the target was set by 2030 we should be able to fulfill these 17 goals. 360 articles were there in the whole Sustainable Development Goals. Now, this is just a small background to make you understand that whether we will be able to create a sustainability by these all global phenomena brought or ratified by the nations concerned, and how far the India has been able to play a role, and how we have been successful. And all these points I'm going to touch upon today to see you that yes, there is a need for a circular economy vis-a-vis in relation to the linear economic formation of growth, and then how this circular economy will be a focus of or to a local level. So that is here I am morely concerned with the economic transformation, and that how the economic transformation at a grassroots level through circular economy can be more helpful for local people. And we will be able to solve the maximum problem at a grassroots level through this. But this is a background where I thought you should understand me that, wow, I have picked up this topic of circular economy.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
And then let me share my slide. I hope all of you can see this. This is circular economy and CSR and sustainability. Now, what has happened is that we cannot solve problems that we created them. So that means we started the economic transformation of a chain with using maximum resources to increase the GDP. But we never thought of that whether this is going to have a fallback or not. We never thought of. And the kind of the technology, the issues taken up probably cannot be applied to improve the same situation. So therefore, the scenario today seems to be little different than what is existing when we started having a challenge to solve them. Now, it is generalization of how we look at, say, the different indicators I'm going to take up today with you. I'll be touching upon the social indicators. I'll be talking about the environmental indicators. I'll be talking about the economic indicators. I hope there's a long list. And when you merge these, there's a commonality at 2 points, maybe for a social and economic. Then you can see that is where the socio-economic settings, we need to have a fair trade. You have to have the workers' right, business ethics, social and community sponsorships. This talks about the human dimensions of sustainability. You have social and environmental sustainability, which talks about the environmental justice. You have local and global resource stewardship. You need to understand that what globally is available to not only one country, but it is the wealth of all nations or the whole world as such. And then you need to regulate the whole by policies and by framing the different kind of programs and the climate change and the crisis management in the whole. So you have two ends today. In isolation, you see social, economic justice, environmental justice, but then you combine, then you have a social economic situation to understand in CSR and sustainability, or even the circular economy. You need to understand the social environmental setting, and that is where, again, we need to work on the sustainability aspect, and then the circular economy need to be understood. Then you have the environmental economics. How fast you are going to take the benefit of environment at the same faster rate the environmental degradation will take place. And therefore, you require bigger investment in environmental management and both at the economic changes. So you need to have to understand that how we are going to financially regulate the money or the funds for all these kind of three major parameters. And that what it says, sustainability is an integrated approach. And that is what I said, related to social, environmental, economics. And that is where you are going to have a long-term sustainable balanced growth, making a profit for the sustainable societies to live on. And at the same time, when you try to look at and compare the kind of the traditional economy, that is what we say the linear economy. These words are to understand later whether the CSR and how they are applying it, how the sustainability is being understood, how circular economy needs to be understood. So you need to understand the economy, and that is one is the linear economy. you begin with the resource mobilization, and then you come out with the waste. I hope then the waste is that you are not able to manage, and the waste is accumulated. I'll show you next slide that it becomes too big an issue and unmanageable by the people. So that is how the linear economy talks about the take, make, and dispose. And that is where the step-by-step plan, this means the raw material will be collected, manufactured, consumed, and the waste is generated. So you need to have a value is created to the economic system by producing and selling as many products as possible. Is a linear economy. You get the resources, produce them, and sell it in the market and get the profit. But no one is worried about the end of that is what is called as the waste. So linear consumption now probably is reaching to a limit. So that means it has come situation that most of the non-renewable resources are on the decline, or they cannot further be harnessed with the present use of technology. So if it is all happening, it is reaching to a maximum limit, and then the kind of changes taking place, and it places excessive pressure on the environment to extract more resources, and it also jeopardizes the finite natural resources. So that means there is a limit for resource, or sometimes we say limits to grow. So once you reach to a maximum or optimum limit to grow, beyond which it becomes unsustainable. Therefore, there's a need to accelerate the process, which is called as a linear economy, or linear economy to a circular economy, and that is called as the circularity. And that talks about the sharing of the resources, leasing, or you may be reusing, repairing, reversing, and recycling. And that will produce the whole in a long, infinite way, as long as you can use and reuse these resources. That is what the circular economy or circularity talks about. And there's a point when you see what goes around comes back around to you. And that is where this diagram shows and talks about that you need to regulate the whole process of economy of both production, consumption, and distribution system, looking at the kind of the resource availability and what it really going to produce to you and how you are going to use it up. This model talks about the same, and the circular economy talks about the goods, and that talks about the closed loop system, and where the goods and material retain their maximum value. And a circular economy will always try to restore to environmental reduction, reducing consumption of finite resources, and which drastically lessen the production of waste. That means how efficiently the resources are being used. Now, in the process of this whole, what is happening is the end product of one industry should become a raw material for a second industry, and then second to a third to a fourth and a fifth. So therefore, if you have a continuity of the different kind of industries using the resources, and the output is being used as a raw material for the second one, and then finally after this formation will change to a cyclic in a form, and then no waste or a minimum waste will be generated. And that is where it is an action-based, scientifically understanding, and that is how either you recycle them or redistribute them for as a raw material to a next industry. And that is going to really successfully implement the circular economy within the society, because society is one which really requires numerous kinds of the material from in the day-to-day life. And that is how it really, the circular economy is helpful, and it is benefited in terms of having a very strategic plans and both micro and a macro level either it can begin at a grassroots level or it can become a global in scale. And this is a $1 trillion opportunity. I hope the cycling and recycling of material is creating huge amount of assets in terms of money and in terms of employment generation, and having a straight impact on reducing the carbon credit too. And therefore it is considered to be opening new innovation frontiers for the people to create new jobs and to then see the economic growth happening. So this is where I would say that the requirement is from a linear economy, which has happened earlier, was good up to a time period today. But now we need to really move faster. And then when you look at, say, how it really circular financing is being done through the circular economic model in the economic recovery stage. And now after COVID, we say this is the fourth industrial revolution which is going to take place, which has altered the whole world. Many industries have become unfunctional today. And then there's a vision of new industries, which is on the forefront today. So that means the fourth industrial revolution will undergo a huge change. And when you look at this funding, which talks about the opening up of new exciting research areas and where the financing can be done. And the financial market is also looking at what is the kind of a tradition or transition of an economy happening. All economies will not transit at the same time. It has already happened and began in Europe or in the first world country, because they could understand that, yes, there is going to be a greater need to regulate the circular economy from a traditional linear economy, and how the investment can be done in theory and practice at all levels of economy. I say at all levels of economy, either it can be in the primary economy, in the agriculture or primary sector. You can have all that. Even in the secondary sector, I hope there is a great scope after the primary sector has changed to a large scale into the secondary sector. Even at the tertiary sector, there is some scope, and that is how it all happens with. I hope when you look at the financial instruments of the idea and the net cash flow, it will continue to increase by the time your economy is maturing from the idea you set up to begin with. And then you make a startup, companies were coming up. There is people, they are in the early stage, and then they will finally grow up to expansion and then to a maturity state. I would say that the Tata are in the maturity state. I, say, for example, have an idea, and there are people, those who have just picked up, they are in a startup. And then those who are in the early stage, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and now their companies are expanding with multiple ways. And that is how the whole granting, which you can see down the line, from private R&D grants to incubator centers to public financing with the global or maybe local. And then the equity is also playing a role. And how does this financing of a circle business model works on, right from a idea stage to the maturity stage, and it grows with time. And the net cash flow will always move with maturity. And that is how it's going to regulate the whole mechanism from a stage one to last, and the last one is going first again to a new idea. It continues to grow. Now, when you look at, say, the circular economy finance, I hope it is also a subject matter of my concern today, because I have taken money from the corporation. I have worked with them. So therefore, keeping that in mind, maybe people, even in the corporation today, I would agree that they don't really understand what is the circular economy. They know, yes, the investment has to be done. They know that, yes, we need to take care of the environment. They also they need to work on something to really see that the sustainability of the whole organization and the business should happen. That is the general notion people, they say. but how much role the finance is playing in a circular economy, which is need to be understood. And it's very sophisticated because the demand for sustainable finance by the investor is also by the company stakeholder. So therefore, the sustainability of a finance by investors or by the company shareholders is a very sophisticated kind of an exercise in a circular economy. And then the circular economy finance and spending remains small scale in comparison to both other green finance and spending in a linear economy. So therefore, the still financing is too low in a circular economy in comparison to the green finance or to a linear economy. And then the current investments are also low at a global level, even in a circular economy, which is a transition at a different scale. So that means a lot of investments have not been come up in the circular finance or circular economy in comparison to the linear economy. And people or the organizations have to really move from the linear to a circular economy. And I said it's a very sophisticated kind of an exercise where the demand for finance for a sustainable development, either by the investors who are making or the company stakeholders, are in a complex situation to understand that. And therefore, it is also being believed that the circular economy also help in the sustainable development goal in achieving the local sustainability. Lastly, what it happens is that everything what you do and invest will come down to a grassroots level. And if that grassroots level sustainability is not maintained, we are able to achieve the sustainable development goals by 2030. So therefore, these nations need to have a very strong policy framework and a very clear roadmap for the circular economy. Probably it is the situation where the mature economies have understood it and they have started making a lot of efforts in making or recycling the or maybe increasing the resource efficiency target. I was reading in one of the magazines long time back that yes, if you are able to break one atom of coal, probably can give you enough energy required for one day for a nation like India. So you need to blend up the resources either in increasing the efficiency of your resource by technology change or by recycling. This is a division which needs to be done in the cyclic or in a circular economy. And the kind of the investment guaranteed by the investors also need to be understood with a precondition that the sustainable funding through the foreign direct investment and how they are going to come up in the third world nation or whether they regulate this within their own nations. I hope a lot of efforts are being done in this area in the first world nation, where third world nations really have to have a very strong framework under the National Action Plan, which is still very immature state. The public sector support will also have to really constantly monitor the improvement that is being taken under the equitable outcomes related to ensure sustainability. And for circular economy, finance becomes sustainable and socially inclusive. That is where I said it, that one thing is you are making the business more or economy more sustainable, but it has to, and if socially, if it is not inclusive, that means the whole circular economy has no meaning. Therefore, we need to always identify and necessarily adopt and internationalize new ideas. And CSR was one new ways where 2% profit of the total company would go under the different heads, which will cater all social, economic, and environmental issues. And that is the new idea which has come up. So therefore, the circular economy can better support social inclusion and equality and access to opportunities created by this circular economy. So if you are able to generate, then you are becoming more social inclusive and you are having a quality assess of opportunities and in a circular economy. And then when you look at, say, the global phenomena, this financial circularity includes the global phenomena, and that relates to the first movers, opportunities for the first movers. And you need to have the necessary steps to circulate economy, and that to be brought into the consumption production system for more sustainable and delivering by 2030 agenda. And this talks about the 9R concept under the UNEP model, which everyone knows about. We have already discussed it. And if you are able to bring in this financial circularity includes that is related to manage the integrate the circularity into strategic and environmental, social and governance ESG criteria. So that means whatever we started with environment, social and economic, that is the governance as a, and then we need to set in the resource efficiency targets, and we need to really reorient loan and investment towards more sustainable technologies and business models. Either you need to increase the efficiency from traditional technology to a modern technology, or maybe you are increasing the efficiency of the production processes, and that you need to bring into your own business model. I hope we made a kind of an assessment to Rourkela steel plant and other bigger houses. I found that the technology was outridden. You need to reinvest into bringing new technology, which is very costly. Even the kind of the recycling economy also requires huge investments. The new technologies has to be brought into, which will create a sector or develop a sector of knowledge and competencies of the government within this circular economy in a business model for financing opportunities at any level in the circular economy, or apply sectoral metrics to the decision making. So either you invest in the financial opportunities or in the decision making, and then you need to understand the raise awareness of resource efficiency with your clients and those who are making in the investments into the thing, and develop the knowledge how changes in the environmental law and physical policies linked to resource consumption and waste may affect the company's license to operate competitiveness. I hope all of you are from the background with the chartered accountancy. I hope when you go and assess all these finances of a company, one need to really redesign the circular economy model of business by these and what efforts they are doing to all this in terms of the UNP model of 9R, or what they are doing in terms of ESG, or what they are doing in resource efficiency, or what they are doing in the sustainable technologies, and how they are making the sectoral knowledge or making awareness of the resource efficiency, or how they are able to develop knowledge system related to different parameters of the company, and then to monitor the opportunities through circular economic growth. I hope there's a huge kind of a global phenomena which is taking place today. So what world would generate in making unsustainable earth? Now, why I said it so is why there's a need for circular economy, because you need to understand that the output of the process is going to generate 2.01 billion tons of municipal waste annually, with at least 33% of that extremely conservatively not managed in an environmental safe manner. So that means this much of the municipal waste, and which 33% cannot be managed. One big issue today. And the worldwide waste generated per person is 70.74 kilograms, which may go around to 4.54 kilograms. It depends on the kind of people in the society we live in. Then there's only about 16% of world population. High income countries generate about 34%, or maybe 683 million tons of world waste. Is too big in size, and global waste is expected to rise by 3.4 billion tons by 2050. What will you do with this? And annually, this is going to happen. That will create a huge problem. And then you see a comparison you draw between the high income countries, income group countries, upper middle income countries, or low income countries. I hope the first world has 13 times more waste than the low income countries. And in that case, what is to be done in terms of the kind of situation to improve? And I said it, if this is the situation, then the first world need to make investment. The first world need to make investment, and if they are able to make, because they're also being affected by either by themselves or by the waste generated by the third world nation. Both are equally partners to it. Now, how people understand that? Now, when I just start working with the people in an industry, then the 52% would say, yes, I can easily define the term circular economy. And I can give examples also. And 38% people know the term meaning, but not entirely they can explain it. Or 5% would say, I just heard it. And 5% would say, I don't completely know anything about it. So that means 50% people have no concern in the business sector, even today, for a circular economy. And then you look at, say, the implementing this circular economy within the organization, 58% would say yes, and the rest 35 and 7% about this. So therefore, can we create a circular economy with this kind of the percentage and figures with us? But yes, we can say that this kind of the circular economy will create 4.5 trillion economic opportunities by avoiding waste, while also creating business growth and employment opportunities out of the output of the industrial or the kind of waste just generated. So that is the key concept would be that people should understand and know that they should be able to cross-examine the circular economy and a linear economy. They should understand what resources are, both perishable and non-perishable sources. They should understand how many critical resources are available in this world. They once perish, they will never come back. And what is the embedded values related to them? And then you need to really increase the efficiency by eliminating waste or rebuilding the natural capital, or we say environmental management, or maybe adding value to it, or regenerative ideas, and how do you restore the natural systems. We will be discussing this later part. So then this, how do you synthesize the different ideas of the circular economy in the sustainability practices? Now, once say you have a practice, normally which is being adopted by the business houses, then we say, what are the sustainability practices or the perspective they carry and how to synthesize this? So therefore, there are 5 ways to do that. One is biometrics, and that is what is to find a solution to meet the challenges. Biomimetic is the context to sustainability. It is related to create the products, new products, have a new processes, and place and the policy that will have a harmony with life on this earth for a long period of time. So that means the biometric is the one which finds the solution in the circular economy, which will try to synthesize the sustainability perspectives. The cradle to cradle is one, the cyclic natural system in relation to the output and input by step, how much you bring in, how much it goes out, and then how you realize it under the whole process of regenerative design initiatives, what the organization taking up. Then there is a way to look at the circular economy in terms of the performance. And that's, I told you in the beginning, it is a closed loop. And the production processes that also talks about the life extension of the products. It talks about the long life goods, reconditioning of the activities, and then the waste prevention. So, nutshell again, the idea and the performance is how well you are able to use the whole raw material under the closed loop. And that is what the next one talks about, the industrial ecology, which talks about the how much energy will flow and move out or circulate within the industrial system. And then lastly, it talks about the natural capitalism, and that refers to the world's stocks of natural assets. And you have the biotic and abiotic resources, and that you need to assess under the circular economy. So if you are able to have these five, then you can integratively have an idea, integrative idea, and that how the several sustainability perspectives can be attained through the circular economy. Now, there are five crucial reasons of implementing circular economy for sustainable development for a nation as a whole. One is minimizes the environmental harm. So I hope when we say the end product is not piling up on our own environment, I hope it really minimizes the environmental impact. And it also never degenerates the ecosystem productivity. And it doesn't also have a great excessive pressures on the ecosystem. And that really improves the ecosystem services of water, air, and soil cleaning. It happens like this. Therefore, you minimize the environmental harm. And it also promotes the opportunities for industrial empowerment. And that is where we said it's going to create 4.5 trillion economy globally by 2030. How many industries will also further come in to improve and promote the economic opportunities of the end of the waste that is being generated. And this recycling industry will try to really create about 110 billion type of economic activities and nearly 5,34,000 jobs and 13.2 billion of tax revenues for government across the country in India. So therefore, the boost is also further boost the satisfaction through corporate social responsibility. Now, it is where the industries or the business houses, once they adopt the CSR, then there is a boost to their business satisfaction. And this is creates the CSR has been found to increase a business. All those who adopt this, and market value has gone up by 6%, and that the employees' productivity by 13%, and it improves the employment engagement by 7.5%. So therefore, when CSR is brought into the business satisfaction is going up, and therefore the employee productivity goes up, the market value goes up, and the employees' engagement also goes up once you have the corporate social responsibility. And the next one is the reduces the waste from traditional beer economy. What is being generated, circular economy really reduces that. And then shift to the renewable energy. It's a finite source of energy, and that is where 26% of world electricity today. But you want to increase this share by 30%. I hope India is making the great effort in the renewable energy resources. It is more cost effective and sustainable way of energy. So I hope I understand is that once you have an alternative source of energy from the gas or maybe the oil or maybe the other different kind of the material presently being used, then in any case, the renewable energy is going to change the whole world and reduces the waste into the atmosphere or may reduce waste on the ground or maybe into the oceans. So therefore, radically, you will see there will be a saving on this earth. So now the standards have been set. Now, when circular economy also need to be standardized, and then but still it is not very appropriately being done throughout the world. But yes, most of the first world countries and especially the British Standard Institution has brought in BS 8001 in 2017 as a framework for the circular economy organization. So that means they are standardizing the process, and that talks about aligning the far-reaching ambitions of circular economy, which establish the British routine of organization level. Idea is when these all standards have been set in, it is going to be having a far-reaching ambitions, and it talks about the what these standards contains. It contains the comprehensive list of circular economy terms and definition. It describes the circular economy principles. It talks about the flexible management framework for implementing circular economy strategy in organizations. It also talks about the guidance of circular economy monitoring and assessment. I hope the Chartered Research Institute should even take up the circular economy standards for assessment of their CSR and sustainability reporting into consideration. And at the same time, the International Organization of Standardization also have TC 323 for a circular economy, which talks about the different tools, guidance, frameworks, and it involves to maximize the contribution toward the sustainable development. So far only the British Standard Institution, BSI, has developed BS 8001 in 2017, and then the same circular ISO TC 323 has been also standardized. But 4 new ISO standards are under development and in the direct responsibility of the committee to see what is to be done. Although many nations have not standardized their business or a circular economy to the British standard institutions or standards maintained or brought in by themselves. So this is where how this idea, when I have discussed this, how this idea has developed of the circular economy, there are numerous ways and numerous definitions which have been applied to circular economy. But it happened in 1966. Kenneth Boulding explained we should have a cyclic system of production. That was the beginning in 1966. I hope that was the time when the John F. Kennedy also said we should have the scientific development. And that was a time at the same that Kenneth also talks about the cyclic system of the production, not as circular economy. The term circular economy appeared first time in 1988, the economics of natural resources, and that it describes about the economic system where the waste at extraction, production and consumption state turns into input. So therefore, there is a waste at all the levels of the production, extraction, production and consumption system. And in the early 2000s, China also integrated the notion into their industrial and environmental policies under the resource-oriented, production-oriented, waste use or reorientation, and the life cycle oriented. So that China was the one in 2000 brought in the idea of circular economy in their total production system. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation gave this concept in Europe and in America. And the European Union introduced this vision probably in 2014, a new circular economy action plan, having been launched in 2020, show the way the climate neutral, competitive economy and empowered consumers. Now, this is where I thought I should discuss with you. We are still having a challenge of adopting this climate neutral. But now the zero emission, probably the new agenda that has been set by the world leaders today, where Narendra Modi ji talks about that we have zero emission by 2017. Some nation has said by 2060. Some have said by 2050. So all nations looking at their own capabilities are giving zero or a climate neutral way of management. And they want to have the competitive economy, which they talks about this circular economy, and they want to empower the different consumers. I hope this is the pace setting for understanding the new idea of circular economy. And I hope most of the nations are still in a stage to understand that. So when we look at, say, the government of India driving transition from linear to circular economy, India is also making a same effort in terms of why, because we have 2% of the land mass and 4% of the freshwater resources, and the linear economy probably is not going to have a long lasting forever. So therefore, it is essential to recognize and revolutionize the material flow in the manufacturing processes and shift towards circular economy. So that means we have a very large population. One, we have a 2% of the world land mass and 4% of the freshwater sources, but we are second largest nation in the world population. And we need to really shift from the linear economy to a circular economy, which will provide the multi-pronged economic and ecological benefit for this nation as such. I hope I'm very happy to say that the new initiative taken up by this government, and one of the best looks to be is the Atmanirbhar Bharat, is a sustainable growth-based model based on the circular economy, and which talks about that we should be able to have develop a model that optimize utilization of resources under Atmanirbhar Bharat. With a growing population, rapid urbanization, climate change, environmental pollution, India must move towards circular economy. This is a caution. But yes, the government is making all efforts through various different programs and policies where they have been able to do that. And government of India has been actively formulating policies which they have been able to do that and modify under the norms of a circular economy, either for the plastic waste management rules have come up, e-waste management rules have come, construction and demolition waste management rules have come, or metal recycling policy that is also being introduced by India. Now, therefore, there are 11 major areas of concern where we need to focus and have a considerable challenge, and the new areas must be addressed in the holistic manner. I hope you can see these 11 are the municipal solid waste and liquid waste management, which comes under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, scrap metal under the Ministry of Steel, electronic waste under the Ministry of Electronics, Information Technology, lithium batteries, the Niti Aayog, solar panel, MNRE, gypsum, industry and internal trade, toxic and hazardous industrial waste and the chemicals and petrochemicals, use of oil waste, that is the petroleum and natural gas, agriculture waste under agriculture and farmers welfare, tire and rubber recycling, promotion of industry internal trade, end of life vehicle, that the Ministry of Transport and Highway. I hope this is where we have 11 major industries which has the largest number of the waste generated, which is to be managed at a different level. Either this should not harm the society, we should not harm the environment, and it should not harm the economic system of a nation. Therefore, these 11 ministries have a greater responsibility to bring in the circular economy under their ministerial level. So therefore, India's situation seems to me a concern, because there are hundreds and millions of Indians live in a biomass-based economy, even as on date today. And the environment, land, water, forest, air is their basic assets. They are living with a very limited resources. And the environment is also under a constant degradation. And the kind of destitution and the poverty still is prevailing in India. Then therefore we want to develop this country, and you have to bring out millions of people, those who are in the poverty line, to bring them up. So these remains as a India's situation and a concern, and circular economy is really going to solve their issues and problems. Why? Because it says that the circular economy of principle could help India realize really 642 billion. India can save, seems to be like that, by 624 billion by 2050 if it adopts circular economy principles, rather than forming the conventional more waste development path, that is the linear economy. And we need to really work where the international organization talks about that India has a very large scope in creating wealth by 2040 under the principles of circular economy. And then India can really do that. Then it can also save about 11% of the current GDP by 2030, and by 30% of GDP by, say, 2050. And this is a proven approaches adopted by public and private sector. The greenhouse emissions could also be cut by 44%. This talks about that the great strength for India is to realize the wealth to be created by the circular economy. Then how seriously do Indian companies take going to green? Now, this is a concern. So therefore, the time is that as India builds its economy, it's time to make circular and sustainable. That is the time requirement for them to do. India has to make effort because the kind of situation of the economic, ecological, and the economic and welfare complement and sustain each other. India registered six-fold increase from 1.8 billion to 7 billion tons of annual material consumption. Look at the kind of the population change and the consumption to 7 billion tons. And by 2022, the consumption would further increase. And it is expected by 2030, its annual material consumption would double to 14.2 billion tons due to population growth, urbanization, economic mobility, and per capita resource consumption. This is how the India has to rebuild its economy on circular and sustainable basis. Now, these are the indicators which shows the consumption level is going to really increase. And look at, say, how the European recycle 70% of its consumption items. India recycles only 20%. India is also the third highest emitter of greenhouse gases and accounts for 9.2% total world emission. That means it is really very high. And therefore, circular economy can bring India annual benefit to 40 lakh crores by 2040. So look at the kind of the change what we can see through the circular economy, where India can maintain it for its own sustainability. And the investments have to be there from at the same point. India needs to do what India really needs to do that for it. Now there's a need for the citizen awareness and source segregation across the entire population. India having population about, say, 130 crore people and different regions, different background, different qualifications. I hope we need to really create that awareness. Then we need to really look at to give tax incentives and financing to those who adopt the circular economy and become financially viable. And then you need to really have a industry-specific roadmap. And if you are able to do that, then the players can be identified. And you need to really have the technological innovations and the technologies that make this circular economy possible and viable, and policy roadmap and coordination between national government, state government, city government, and the industry, and even at the global and the panchayat level. I hope India need to focus on 5 areas of concern under the circular economy if they really want to see that there's a change happening in the environment, change happening in the financing or happening in the financial outlay. India need to focus on awareness and source segregation, tax incentiveness and financing. You should also work on the industry-specific roadmap for circular economy. It also needs to really work on technological innovations, and it needs to work on the policy roadmap and coordination in the industry. So therefore, the next part was given to me is related to CSR and sustainability, global to local approaches. Now, this is where my concerns have been that it's a very, very different kind of a situation when I look at myself working in the area of CSR, working with the local communities, working with the government machinery, working in the government sector. I hope my concern raises to so many issues. Therefore, global to local approaches need to be more focused to attain sustainability, and CSR plays a very important role within that system. Now look at, say, the idea behind this is that it's a common idea throughout the world, whether rich people, rich nation, poor nation, everyone wants to have access to clean air and water and economic opportunities. So that means this is one set where we want to have the access to clean air and water, and we need to have economic opportunities where economy need to, and look at what the situation humans have been able to do for the earth as on day to day. We need to have a safe place to and a healthy place to raise our kids, and we need to have a proper shelter, and we should have a line of learning within the system, and we should also have a sense of community and the ability to have a say in decision and affect their lives. Now, this is where this is a common concern. A setting idea under sustainability is that where we can live, we can produce and remain healthy, and we should be able to grow. And that is where a global shift to sustainability would save $26 trillion. So this is the kind of the saving if we are able to understand and move toward the sustainability parameters. Who will make a beginning? I hope this is a very important and a kind of a concern related to. So when you look at, say, this figure on the left-hand side, you will understand that the social foundations seems to be when under the microscopic condition, when we try to analyze it, it gives me water, it gives me food, health, gender inequality, social equality, energy, job, voice, resilience, education, and income. I hope this is where I think I have a social foundation for myself. And then you require a just space for a humanity, a place to live, for inclusive, sustainable economic development, where you can work and function and perform. And in the outer circle, you are being impinged by a climate change because of unsustainable conditions. The fresh water use is on decline, and the nitrogen and phosphorus cycle is on the change. Ocean acidification is increasing. Chemical pollution is more or less increasing. Atmospheric aerosols are increasing in number. Ozone depletion is very high. Biodiversity losses are tremendous. Land use changes are happening from the basics to live to any other kind of any use. I hope this is a kind of the situation where I live within a system given to me presently. Then what do you look at, say, all global sustainability to local, assessing the progress toward the sustainable development over space and time? How far we have moved from this idea to provide a sustainable space, and what is the time required to do that? And what is this local sustainability? When I say I live in Delhi, then what are the conditions of local sustainability? I live in a rural area. What are my local sustainability ways? And that means when that area is designed and how I operate and I use the natural resources efficiently and equitably in for both present and future generations, for human beings and other species too. I have a life for myself, but at the same time, the other species also have the life. Therefore, local sustainability talks about a good relationship with other natural resources and myself using them very efficiently and equitably. That's called as a local sustainability. And that is what is the requirement for today to manage. And when you look at, say, global sustainability, the outer circle of this diagram you see, it talks about the great relationship with human and natural environment of the society with the biosphere. And then can we coexist the way they enable productive harmony, and then the stability and the resilience to support the present and future generations. So therefore, globally, when we say the higher income countries are generating more waste, and at the same time, the third world nation is also grappling up with the same resource deficiency, maybe lack of technology, maybe the efficiency of their sources is very low. So therefore, we need to move from local to global sustainability initiative. It's a collective action, whether I live in US or I live in Bangladesh. So both have to be having a collective action. Both should work toward the progressive and self-reflexive activities. And they need to undertaken within the communities and design and develop more sustainable relationship within the natural environment and including its own members and the members of the other community. So this is in terms called as the local to global sustainability initiative. So comprehensively, everyone needs to work together, whether the society, whether the individual, the different nation, or within the continents, everyone has to take the earth as one unit, as a globe, and need to have a coexistence of our livelihood. Maybe at a global level, what I harm always have an impact in US. The people in the US are doing, I have an impact here in India. Many ways to define and look at that. Now, when you look at, say, this idea behind, then the perspective of sustainable development, it also incorporated within this sustainability into 27 principles of sustainable development in Rio Declaration, which talks about that the system thinking approach is toward problem solving. Now, my question is, I create a problem, but I don't know how to solve it. The overall system deteriorates like this. So therefore, the one who is prepared to really take the system into a problem, they should be able to give something in relation to how to improve it. So that means the sustainability issues are linked and part as a whole. And then the understanding the local issues in a global context. I just said it. So what is happening in my village also have an impact at a national level. And what is happening at a national level have an impact on the global level. So that means, therefore, it's a collective responsibilities of the all nation to solve the local problems, those who can solve the global consequences later. So therefore, realizing the individual consumer decisions. Now, how much one should really use the resources. Different views and decisions and judgment can be given that. So the consumer decision is that I can spend more money. It doesn't mean that I can waste more. But yes, if the one who doesn't have more resources and consumes less, doesn't mean that he doesn't eat anything. Therefore, there is a need to have a consumer decisions and recognizing the economic values, religious values, and societal values in the sustainable development. Therefore, we need to honor all these. My economic values to be understood, recognized, the way I grow, the way I produce, and the way I have a religious values in a system where I live, and then where my society looks like. I come from a traditional society, then my values are different. I come from agricultural society, my views can be different. So my views or values where I live and belong to need to be addressed and need to be recognized. Seeing all humans having universal attributes, I just said it, that I'm not living in isolation today. I am a person of the total globe. So therefore, I have a universal attitude in me. And keeping and knowing the technology and science alone cannot solve our problems. Had it been true, that means the science would have solved our problems. But when you look at, say, the technology and science had added more knowledge, more goods, but at the same rate, they have never given a solution to solve it. And they have to create another science and a technology to solve it. The same science, I said it, what Einstein said, with what notion it was produced, and the same cannot solve our problems. It's the same for sustainable development too. So therefore, emphasizing the role of public participation in the community and governmental decision making. Therefore, the CSR plays an important role. Local communities should be in relation to the decision making what government is doing. It's not always true that government takes a wise decision. And therefore, we need to involve the different kind of stakeholders into the decision making for making the whole system sustainable. And their participation rate need to be increased if they really they are in the process of decision making. And calling a greater transparency and accountability in greater or maybe in the decision making. So how the government is taking a decision, it has to be more transparent, and how it can be more accountable to. And this is what the government has to assure. And that is where the employing the precautionary principles. No, everything we need to know that if we do something, what will be the outcome of? What will be the irreversible impact on environment? Maybe on social, maybe on scientific knowledge, or maybe on inclusive manner, or something like that. So therefore, this precautionary principle is always important, because we do not know what is going to happen in future. Now, when you look at, say, the kind of values for the various development paths, I hope we have already seen the C9R or 9R or CRRs for the sustainability. There is a kind of a scarcity of resources. The food production need to double over next 40 years at a time when almost 23 of the world agriculture land has been degraded. Now, this is a cross-examination and correlation need to be done with the demand and supply. Please understand. At the same time, the world population will be becoming water scarce by 2025. Climate change would really take the water sea level to high, and small island will be submerged. It's also going to have an impact atmospherically. And then the overexploitation of resources. I hope millions of species will be on the verge of extinction. And the decline of more than 60% of the world marine fisheries, because everything is being dumped into the ocean. You see the kind of movement happening in the oceans, oil dumping, oceans, or all kind of things are added into the ocean waters today. Therefore, you need to have different development paths for sustainability. And that what we will be talking in terms of all this in relation to CSR policy also. So various development path talks about the unsustainable development path, which linear economy talks about the balanced one. That is unsustainable development, but that says a balance of growth. Second is the sustainable development that talks about the resource conservation. And then the third one is sustainable development, resource conservation and restoration. So this is how the path need to manage the sustainable development. It will also manage the 7R disciplines to achieve the sustainability under the CSR, which it talks about. Now, when you look at, say, mapping the sustainable development and sustainability, there are two things need to be understood in this. And, oh, sorry. And that is where you see on the x-axis, you have increasing environmental concern, which will continue to increase. And from none, virtually none, to technocentric and to ecocentric. That means the degradation will take place by in a virtually none situation of environmental concern, to where a lot of technologies concentrated will try to change, and then finally it will degrade the ecosystem. And when you see the equality, that is what is related to under the three concern. One is status quo is maintained for sustainable development debate. And that talks about the new liberal economy is related to where we see the inequality is very high. And then it goes toward the reforms and transformation, and which talks about the increasing socioeconomic well-being and equality concerns, which continue to rise, which will give you the equality. So that means with time, what will happen, that from inequality situation to equality, economic and socio-economic transformation taking place, and the reforms are being built up. And that is all for mapping the sustainable development. I'm not going into the detail of the sustainable debate that is happening, but again, we have environmental concern will continue to increase from virtually none toward the ecocentric over a period of time. That means once the equality is going to happen, at the same time, the ecocentric kind of a situation will continue to worse over a period of time. Now, how these global and local approaches need to be understood. So that means you have, say, one needs to move from a base, and that is the yellow one shows about the third world nation. They're valorizing the natural resources contribution to national welfare and improves the national payment balance. That is where the third world nation talks about the same. And at the same time, at the top, where the loop is very small, national development is always locally determined. It's a country like India. And when you look at, say, the first world, you have increased the global poverty needs. Appropriate policies at global level, what they do. So that means on one side, the third world nations are moving up to becoming a global, and the first world is going to become local in approach. And lastly, they want to solve the food crisis through recapturing and traditional local foods. So you look at the loop, kind of a circular situation happening. One is moving from a local resources to a local determined national development process, which remains very small. Those who have already developed, which talks about that if we continue to grow like this, then what will happen to the people who are at that level in the third world nation and which are facing the food crisis today. They are facing energy crisis today. They are facing the environmental crisis today. And there is an instability in the financial flow. So therefore, the third world is looking at creating the appropriate policies at a local level with the financial flow, with the environmental management, the crisis that they are having at the local level. They want to reduce the energy prices and meet the alternative solution at local level. And then again, lastly, they want to improve the food prices, and that is through the traditional food and a local food that is available to us. So this is what the sustainability talks from a local level to a global level, and a cyclic kind of imagine that to be done. So therefore, the next one, it talks about the kind of future skills we require. Of course, we have done the first part. You need to have a system thinking in terms of the sustainability, and the critical thinking also required. You need to really think for future, and you need to really solve the problems. So you have the science problem being based learning, one, pedagogy. You have the social constructive constructual learning, and then you have the last one when you start solving the problem, and that too under the series the transformation learning. And this is what is a figure talks about the transforming our worldwide view toward the sustainable future. And then you have the solutions, what they talk about, this sustainable lifestyle. You have a change agent, sustainable organization, sustainable ecosystem, cultural transformation, and well-being society. So that means the solution is being provided to society, to nature, problem solving, and transformer learning toward the total well-being of the society. This is the worldview of the sustainability. Then this Millennium Development Goals came up in 2015. They came to an end, which talks about the all CSR related activities of global partnership, eradicate hunger and poverty, universal education, primary education, which talks about empowering women. They talked about the reduced child mortality. They also want to improve the maternal health and also combat the different kind of diseases. And they also want to ensure the environmental sustainability. Now, these are eight one of them having a relationship to the critical situation in 2015, but they only emphasize we need to really partner up globally. So once you really globally partner, and the same approaches were also adopted under the CSR guidelines in 2010. So I am taking that once the global sustainability was looked upon, and for you require the funds, so that the funds were generated out of the corporations generating a profit, and 2% has to be kept for improving the target of Millennium Development Goals at that time in 2010. And it went on, and all the corporations really incorporated all this value system in their CSR policy. Although it never became with a guideline at that time, but they were asked to frame a policy for it. And they started doing it slowly and slowly. And the 2013 Company Act, Article 135, really talks about in great details of the CSR. guideline, and that became an act. So once it became an act, they had to create a policy and in group all the different parameters were asked by the government to bring it. And then thereafter, after 2015, the Sustainable Development Goals came into 17. I hope they all talk about which can see the kind of initiative to be taken up under the CSR policy. So CSR, so whatever has to be implemented under the CSR, in most of the cases, all these activities can also be taken up under the CSR programs. So then the 10 principles were given by the UN Global Compact, and I discussed with them. It is related to human rights, labor standards, environment, and anti-corruption, which talks about the different business should support and respect the protection internationally proclaimed human rights, and it makes the human right, there should not be any human right abuse, and all labor and their effectiveness has to be taken care under the business. And at the same time, in the environment, they have to support precautionary approach on environmental challenges because they are using the local resources, and the people are becoming marginalized or the societies are uprooted. And under the principle 8, it talks about the greater environmental responsibility of the corporations at that time. And then the principle 9 talks about the diffusion of environmentally friendly technology into. So the challenge, they have to take precaution, they have to really promote environmental responsibility, and at the same time, they have to develop environmental friendly technologies, and anti-corruption, of course, is a business related issue too. I hope the next one is what we do. How do you try to connect these all challenges in terms of sustainability, place-based sustainability approaches? You can have a rural area, you can have a municipality, you can have anything. So when you talks about the global sustainability, you have to bring in locally triggered transformation to co-construction of solutions globally. That gives us the strength. And then you cross-synthesize them and then try to bring into local and indigenous knowledge. Then it becomes local indigenous based transformation happening. So you have, say, the different kind of the opportunities related to the different location and places. And the global community practices and the regional thinking from a global to a local can be understood. And then the challenges are how you can really integrate them in a kind of a spatial and a temporal mismatch is there in the different kind of a local and a global practices, and you need to upscale them. So you have the two ends. One is the sustainability research place-based, and you have a global sustainability, how you want to integrate them. And that is where they said it, adopt all the global initiatives into your own programs locally. And then you see, it says you have to have informed global sustainability, place-based research fosters co-construction of local sustainability solutions, transfer the scaling up place-based insight faces several challenges, and then you have new institutional framework setting and community foster place-based research. So that means a lot of scope is there to bring in this sustainability research into practices. Now, then you look at, say, the kind of the earlier deliberation I made. It talks about the few parameters related to sustainability solution and demand side management. Within the circle, you say you have sustainability solution and demand side management services. This is really very, very important today because we were talking to some of the organizations. They say, what is the demand side management? So demand side management needs to be done to optimize the resource use. To demand side is the energy efficient building, clean energy project, greenhouse gas reduction. This is the demand side management. Sustainability reporting, resource optimization, electric mobility, climate change resilience plan, ecological monitoring, and water audits. So if you have a demand side management of all this related to energy, related to resources, related to climate, related to ecology, related to water, you are going to create a sustainability solution, and that is demand based. So now the next concept is, if you want to have a sustainability, the demand based side management has to be done, and that is the requirement of the CSR to be done at the same time. Now, who developed the CSR and the circular economy or sustainability initiative? The Cohran talks about the circular economy is a sustainable development model initiative that has been taken up, and the others are also talking about the high value material cycle. I will be talking about the same in the CSR, how the traditional recycling methods can be approached at the sustainable development work, which we have done it in one of the area where I will show you. Then the Murray is again who talks about maximize ecosystem functioning and human well-being is also a concept of the CSR. So how are financial performances CSR related? This talks about the financial circularity. So now you have to understand the sustainability. It talks about how value material cycles. It talks about, say, all recycling. It talks about the traditional recycling. It talks about the maximizing ecosystem functioning and human well-being. And then the finances and the CSR are related to financial circularity, which talks about a greater focus on CSR makes company more appealing to investment. Please understand, those companies who have more CSR outreach, they become more appealing to the investment and consequently leads to a higher financial provision. I have already made a mention too that if they perform well in their CSR, the investment would come in only on the financial performances. And given that current investors are aware of the importance of, because they all understand that money is going as an investment to an organization who is socially responsible, environmentally responsible, and economically responsible. So if the investment under a CSR has to be brought in, then the investors are also looking to these different aspects. What is CSR finance? So which talks about the social responsibility programs allow a business to utilize their strength to benefit the local community. So the funds from the profit is moving toward the local benefit. And if local benefits or the local community, local environment, local cohesion of the economic system is maintained, the cyclic form of money flow from a higher level to a local level, and the local level regenerating, recreating, and economically empowering will also make a cycle, and that is what is called as CSR finance circularity. And that is why concern today is. So what is a sustainable circular economy in terms of all? We have already discussed it. But when you look at, say, the three different stages in terms of CSR, which they have started working and functioning, energy from waste, CSR is financing mostly project in energy from waste. That is where you grow from recycling to sustainable circularity, from unsustainable to weak sustainability to strong sustainability. This is what under the CSR, energy from waste to sustainable circularity working on. Growth, multidimensional progress at a sustainable level. Growing social inequality, social equity and justice will come up once the sustainable circularity is maintained. Environmental degradation, regenerative natural capital over a period of time. Waste intensive to cost efficient to eco-effective. So when you see, the CSR is also looking into this form of economy, radically changing the whole economy system to strong sustainability, to multidimensionally, to provide social justice, and then to reuse the resources and become most eco-effective. This is what is called as a sustainable circular economy under, say, the CSR program, which they are going to take it up. When you look at, say, the system like this, when you look at the system like this, the circular business model, and then you try to look at the sustainability, you have a business model to a business, sustainable business model to a circular business model. So you have a line from a traditional to sustainable to circular. But in between, you have a solution for sustainability, and that is sustainable value, pro multi-dimensional or stakeholder management, and long-term perspective is looked upon for a sustainable business. When you move from a sustainable business to a circular business model, you are providing solution for the circular economy. So you are moving from sustainability to circular economy under your business model to sustainable business model to circular business model. And you are closing the resource pool, you're slowing the resource loops, narrowing the resource loops, and that is where you are creating the system more workable, and you are moving from a solution for sustainability to solution for circular economy. And that is what the CSR really talks about, the same under the business model. Now, what is needed to be done to create a circular economy through CSR? The idea that circular economy is crucial in achieving change in gaining tractions. It involves using revenues much more wisely. That is where the CSR policy talks about. Designing products require few resources to make and use. That is what they go for, different kind of projects which are not being undertaken by the government or any other agency, and they need to really work on. And whatever they do, how longer it can go. And that is what I said. We started a program which is still lasting, and it has 11 years past. So therefore, can be remanufactured or reused forever. Whether this CSR approach can be over and again used in the same place so that the whole system becomes sustainable under that circular economy cycle. So therefore, it talks about CSR strategies applied in terms of circular economy. So in modern business environment, the dynamic global economics, two things are happening. The type of a business and the type of global economics which is taking place. The corporate social responsibility has become the key factor for success of any organization. It integrates social commitments, environmental care, while business organizations are working for the economic prosperity. So that means the care is being taken and they also make prosperity. So it opens up new sources of knowledge, and it also improves the processes and structure of the organization that could serve source of competitive advantages. So this is where the CSR strategy need to be applied for. Impact of the circular economy, the manner conducting business use socially responsible practices. Large companies in India are able to do that. And then what we say is the type of corporate responsibility business, how they look into action. They are environmentally responsibility, they have ethical responsibility, they have philanthropic responsibility, and economic responsibility. So that means these four types of social responsibilities of a business makes a circular economy, and the funds and financials will flow, and the 2% is the good enough, where recently the Elon Musk has already said it that he's going to give billions of dollars for the eradicating hunger in this world. Now, building this circular economy is a CSR responsibility. Can they do that? It is integral part. They don't mention it, but yes, it is a circular economy through social responsibility. And that is what they say. They will adopt triple bottom line mindset. One, and they will focus on ESG principles, and that is environment, social, and governance. And that is what is there. And adhere to UN Sustainable Development Goals. This is what is a part of corporate social responsibility today. They have moved from the UN Global Compact, they have moved to Millennium Development Goals, they have from Millennium Development Goals, they have moved to Sustainable Development Goals. And that is where the triple line bottom approach, and then the Sustainable Development Goal, and that the ESG principles are to be adopted under the corporate responsibility to have a circular economy. And what is the impact of that is they are going to have an impact on environment that will also create a brand image, and that also reduces the cost and revenues for the corporation. And that is where I hope everyone knows about the kind of the CSR activities can be taken up under the CSR. And this talks about eradicating hunger, education, equality. I hope there's a long list, which you all know that. And when you put them in a cyclic manner, these are the external areas of responsibility of CSR. So CSR, where you see on the figure that side, which talks about the middle and the internal responsibilities, and when you have the external areas of responsibilities, all CSR activities under the Companies Act 2013 are the external areas of responsibility by organization to be done. And then there is one NGO which has done through the CSR, they say the circular economy in total community income has increased to 22 lakh rupees generated from selling recyclable waste. And that is where that has grown to 4 crore 52 lakh rupees in circular economy was created under sustainable community program under Earth 5R. Therefore, this is what is required in India as such. And Government of India has spent 21,231 crore rupees spent by 21,349 companies on CSR fund by 2019 and 20. Now, how can you build the dynamic and by the resilience of productiveness through the CSR as such? It talks about building a circular economy through collaboration. That is what the CSR provides a mandate. It talks about the distributive growth, leveraging the technology into the system. And then the last one, which I want to show you, the fourth one, building a circular economy by going vocal for local. So therefore, you need to have enhanced the local alternatives, enable the local supply chain. This is what actually the CSR and the circular economy talks about. According to the Circularity Gap report, the global economy is only 8.6 circular. Only 8.6% of economy is circular. This means that over 90% of the resources that entered the economy, 100 billion tons per year, are wasted. So that will look at the kind of the waste that is generated. And the Netherlands is one who is working entirely on the leading country in the circular economy. It has an ambitious project to become the country 100% based on a circular economy by 2050. And India has not set the target to become by any age that they will become circular by nature, and already working strategies to manage raw material, products and services more efficiently. That is what the Netherlands would do. So what is the important? To go vocal to local. And there is a need to foster global collaboration to provide necessary infrastructure for collectivity, develop a sustained and a circular economy. Please look at this. That is where our Prime Minister talks about local to global or vocal to local. So why vocal to local is, he says, let's try to develop the local alternatives. Let's try to develop the local supply chains. And that can be best done by the CSR program. And CSR is really doing it. I know in many studies which I have done, they have really done a marvelous job, whether they are the private corporate houses or whether the government corporate houses. And we have also done myself the same thing. Now, this is where now, can you have the circular economy at a local level? Yes, local government, they play a bridging gap, whether the urban bodies or local level bodies, Panchayati Raj, they all do that principle. And the Panchayati Raj institutions also play a very important role to support to shift the circular economy. And they need to identify and prioritize the economic opportunities within a city or in a rural area. That is what the local initiatives are really wonderful under the circular economy. And how can the circular economy becomes a reality for local government globally? Whether it can happen? Yes, in an informal sector where India has a large, you can have a circularity of a value chain, value creation, economic diversification, skill development. I hope these are the areas where CSR is very effective in creating new opportunities for economic diversification under their CSR programs. They are also supporting the value creation. They're also doing a lot of programs on skill development. And also the informal sector is also great in India where this work can be done. So that is where we say there's a global sustainability initiative, and through strengths and challenges and opportunities we are able to identify, we can really do a lot of things related to place-based research, as what we said it earlier. And if you are able to have an institutional research setting and the kind of CSR we are able to manage it up, we are able to achieve the global sustainability initiative under the CSR and local initiative by Panchayat Raj institution or the municipal local bodies. This is what the program we started as an Ab Gaon Ki Or, called as Adarsh Gaon Initiative for Holistic Rural Development to achieve sustainability. And this is where we thought how we can really bring that. We said it and we had in mind that the gas emissions by burning fossil fuels or by wood, we need to bring it down. There's a program for it. We want to healthy and resilient soil. We started a program of soil checking and then value addition to be done. Fewer negative externalities also helps in environmental benefit. Then increased potential for economic growth under the CSR. More resources were saved and utilized. We created employment. We created opportunities for profit. And we really give them the safeguards for supplies of the end product. And we created new services. And we knew how the different kind of stakeholders in the rural areas need to be fostered into the development process. I hope these 10 were taken up as an indicator for holistic development under the whole program. This is where we took up the scientific program on water management, ecological restoration, forest development, energy, land, and biodiversity. And at the same time, the socio-economic empowerment, they were taken up for the agriculture, horticulture, livestock, fodder, women, education, health, hygiene, and everything. And there's an awakening. I hope when you combine all this, this is what is actually the vocal to local. This talks about the integration of various programs for sustainability. This talks about the circularity of the work to be done for total holistic development and how the financial management would be done for a circular method. I hope we have been able to do that. Now, keeping in mind the health sector, we were able to promote, invest, and see the result that economic healthcare system was taken up. This is how we regulated the CSR fund for creating infrastructure for health services. And the output is in the same form where the value for money, which I said it, can be very nicely done and the goal was promoted. I hope the second one, under this circularity of the finance flow and the kind of the economic changes we wanted to bring through the promotion of education, we started large number of programs, and that is where the funds were brought in from the THDC India Limited, regulated and stabilized and made the education system more sustainable. So that means you are making the health for all the 15 to 45 villages as more sustainable. One, by creating facilities closed at their doorstep. One, the second is you are creating a sustainability of education so that there is no dropout and they should learn better, which is the facilities were not created by the government department. Therefore, we created these facilities, and I hope this went on the next one. Then again, we created economic opportunities or economic sustainability by giving them and promoting them in the agriculture, in horticulture. Even we had the buyback mechanism for channels for regulating the production so that there is no waste and it is marketed in a proper time. Therefore, we created a circularity of the development of finances from the CSR, from the THDC to the field, and we created these activities in the promotion of agriculture. Similarly, we have done it for sustainable for the farmers, for the livestock, for the fisheries, and the promotion of the self. I hope there's a long story, but we are hopefully coming to an end of our presentation. Sometime next, we can discuss them in detail. At the same time, we also empower the women, and the sustainability in the environment was created. I hope when you look at, say, the environment, local environment for sustainable development, I hope we had quite a large number of programs. We could save water, we can filter, we created all these ponds, everything local, and in a way, we have been able to socially, environmentally regulate the economy through women's self-help groups of various different forms, created infrastructure for them, and at the same time, we have taken care of environment. And then when you look at, say, the kind of culture we also really changed, we brought in the awakening awareness programs. We also brought the health sector along with the sports. We will be able to promote the holistic rural development through CSR in promoting CSR and sustainability and regulating the financial regularity or circularity by these activities at a larger scale for more than 15,000 people under 45 villages in Uttarakhand. Then, if you say this is where the water was brought in, circulated, electricity was produced, and then you see the whole environmental management was also done at the same time. And then with this, I should say thank you very much for listening. And we have been able to create in a mind that, yes, you have the global issues beginning with, and from global, when it has come down to the local over a period of time, how the corporations have been given the responsibility that is related to manage the environment, to manage the innovations, manage the social system, manage the water, manage the agriculture, manage anything. CSR is a very open-ended approach by which we have been able to bring a change in almost so many kind of areas, which requires a micro level initiative, which government was not able to do that. In that case, the CSR has been proved helpful in creating the sustainability at a grassroots level one, and at the same time, the circular economy, which at a global scale, or maybe from a linear to a circular one, CSR is one. Through financing, microfinancing is creating a circularity of the funds for a greater cause. And I hope with this, we will be able to create a showcase to show the success stories. Yes, this is the best way of a micro level circular economy through CSR for sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for an excellent session.
Yes. I hope with this we can.
You can stop sharing. Yes.
So we can. With this, we can end up. Sukunji.
Yes. So thank you for an excellent session. We received some queries in the beginning of the session, but we think you have solved all the queries in your session. So we don't require those to take up all those queries. So formal vote of thanks from the CSR committee. Thank you, sir, for VCM on circular economy, CSR, and sustainability. And thank you for giving your valuable time. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
So
we have finished on time. Probably this is the right time. 2 hours you told me to.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.